We had Priscilla Reed here 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she said, I wanted to speak about abundance, and she was speaking about Jesus turning water into wine. I thought, I was going to use that miracle. And then I just felt, you know what? The Word of God is so amazing that actually what I had planned in my heart to say was actually slightly different what she had said. So I thought I'll just speak about it anyways. So I just thought we're going to look at miracles for this term. And we're expecting miracles. But I just thought, that what is a miracle? And a miracle is something that is God-breathed. And so a miracle, if you look up the dictionary and all the different ones, I put together this term that says, the name miracle evokes a sense that something extraordinary has happened. It turns the ordinary into exceptional. It signifies that an extraordinary event has taken place, and it surpasses all human understanding, and it is often attributed to a divine intervention. So that's what the dictionary says, and that's actually that would describe miracles. And so in John's gospel, he actually writes lots. He just only has about 7 or 8 miracles. We're going to be looking in John's gospel about the wedding in Cana. But in the New Testament, there are 37 miracles that are recorded. But at the end of John's book, the Gospel of John, he actually says, if we recorded every miracle and every wonder that Jesus did, there wouldn't be enough books to record them. So we just have a snapshot of the types of miracles that the Lord did. But there must be so many more that he did that haven't been recorded. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. And there's some people that are like, miracles, well, that's kind of, I don't know about miracles. Does it happen nowadays? And some people aren't so sure about it, or they'll start debating things. The Bible opens with the first miracle. Genesis 1:1. If you can sort out Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, then every other miracle will fall into place. Because when God says he's created the heavens and the earth, you're creating something from absolutely nothing. And so if you can believe that, then you can believe everything else. I remember hearing someone saying, someone said, did a whale really swallow Jonah? And this old preacher said, well, if the Bible said that Jonah swallowed the whale, I would also believe that. His faith was so strong. So miracles, sometimes we use the name miracles really loosely. Like, it was a miracle, I got a parking spot. No, that's not really a miracle. Or the sun shone on my birthday. Well, that might be a miracle in Scotland. I made it to church on time. No, that's not a miracle. You just left on time. It's not a miracle. We use the term really loosely, but a miracle is actually a God word. So we need to be careful how we use it. A miracle is a divine intervention. Sometimes people overemphasize them, like, miracles, miracles. It's all about miracles. And that's all they talk about. Their whole world is about miracles. That's not what Jesus did. He would do a miracle, and often a miracle would actually galvanize something amazing to happen. His whole life was in miracles. There were many people Jesus didn't heal. When John the Baptist was in jail, I always think of that, and people came and said, you should hear what Jesus is doing. He's doing this, he's doing this. And John's like, really? And he's thinking, well, he's not helping me. He's not going to rescue me. What's happening here? God didn't do that for everybody. There are some people, when some of his disciples said, but take this away from me. It's more than I can bear. And he goes, no, my grace is sufficient. So we don't know why he does miracles or why he doesn't. But we're not going to overemphasize and make a whole church about this is a miracle working church. We believe in a miracle working God, but we also believe in the sovereignty of God. Okay? So the other thing is minimize miracles. And so I've known lots of people in the past that have minimized it. That was for that day. We don't do miracles nowadays. Have you ever seen a miracle? And so they'll ask you, have you seen someone blind see? And you're like, well, no, I haven't, but I've heard about it. See, it doesn't happen. So they will minimize them. And there's even a commentator called William Barclay. And he's an amazing man that's done this amazing commentary in the Bible. But he minimizes miracles. He goes, well, to explain how that probably happened is they probably all brought their packed lunch. And then, when the time came, they all just were nervous to take their packed lunches out. And it was just a little boy that said, but they all brought theirs out. well, how do you explain 12 baskets left over? So he would he would try to make an excuse for it. So we don't overemphasize, we don't underemphasize, and we don't naturalize them. Naturalism is when we talk about everyday things as miracles, like, like I just said, like a baby's born. Babies are born every second of the day. Apparently every second, 7 or 8 babies are born. That's not miracles. The miracle is actually in the creation and how the Creator made it. But miracles are not, babies are born, operations happen, different things happen. That's not a divine miracle, okay? The divine miracle was in the Creator in the first place. These are natural things that happen in our world. And so we don't want to take a miracle and naturalize and go, well, it's because A, B, and C lined up and that's why this happened. No. There's natural laws in the universe and a miracle surpasses that. So we're going to look at John 2, the very first miracle that was done, the wedding in Canaan. I'm just going to read it here. The next day, there was a wedding celebration, or the third day, some of the ones say, there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. That's very important. And Jesus and his disciples were also invited. Now, at this time, Jesus had about 5 disciples he had called. The wine supply had ran out during the festivities. So Jesus' mother said to him, "Hey, they've got no more wine." "Dear woman, that is not our problem," Jesus said. "My time has not come." But his mother listened to him and then turned to the servants and said, "Whatever he tells you, do it." Standing nearby were 6 stone water jars. These are huge, big jars that would be standing this tall, and they would hold all these gallons of water. Huge 6 stone jars used for Jewish ceremonial washing. Each could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, "Fill the jars with water." When the jars had been filled, he said, "Now dip some of this out and take it to the master of ceremonies." So the servants followed his instructions. When the master of ceremonies tasted the wine, he was amazed and said, "You've kept the best wine to last." This was a miracle sign that happened after the wedding of Cana. Jesus and his disciples, and that they went on their way. So this miracle took place, and it's so interesting. Those big jars, everybody at the wedding had used them to wash their hands, wash their feet, whatever they did, all the ceremonial washing they did, they were empty. And Jesus says to them, "These stone jars, these ordinary clay jars, go and fill them." So the first miracle, I think, is interesting. It's a private affair. It's at a family wedding. This family wedding was about 6 miles from where Jesus grew up in Nazareth. It's in Cana. And so it's just a family affair. Jesus' mother and brothers were there. So it was maybe a relative, and they're all there. And these kind of weddings, the world and their dog turned up to them. Everybody came to them. It was a big affair. Somebody was having a wedding, and the invited guests would come. There would be hangers-on coming in. That's just what happens. Even out east, that still happens. A wedding is a big affair. And so these weddings were going for 2 or 3 days. I'm not going to go into the story about what the bridegroom and because they'll often then send for the bride and call the bridegroom. There's lots of rituals and ceremonies that happen. But one of the things is it is a reflection on the groom. And, it's his daughter's wedding or his son's wedding, and what kind of wedding is he going to put on? And so wine would show them that they had lots of money, that it was a joyous thing. And so this was an important thing. And so the wine has run out. This is a disaster. This is why people have come. They've come to celebrate, and there's nothing going on. The wine has run out. So it's a bit of a disaster. And I was thinking, what happens when things go wrong at weddings? So this has gone wrong in their wedding. And I was imagining what happened. I remember many years ago going to a wedding. It was in Queen's Hotel in Queen's Road. And it was very dear friends of ours. And we were there, and we were just newly married ourselves. And we were all waiting in this. And they were taking ages to let us go in. And they'd shut the doors to go into where everybody was sitting down. And I was there, and I thought, what's taking them so long? We were standing around for ages. It just seemed to ages. And one of Angela's uncles, who's from the States, he said, "You know what? The check has bounced. They're just now trying to clear the money." I believed him. I actually believed him. And I thought, oh, that's just so embarrassing. That's awful. And I thought, I'm not going to tell anybody that. That's like information from the uncle. And I remember saying, Ian, you're never going to believe what happened. And I told him. He said, I don't think that's the case. It wasn't the case. But I remember for those few moments until I realized it had been a joke. I just thought, how embarrassing. Imagine all these guests, everybody dressed up, and sorry, we can't feed you because the wedding hasn't been paid for. So that was one thing. There was another wedding we were at, and I think Ian spoke about this once before. We had RSVP'd, and I don't know what had gone wrong in the communication, but Ian had said, we're not going to stay. We'll come down, we'll do the wedding and all this. We won't stay for the end because I'm preaching the next day. So Ian was meaning we won't stay for the evening celebrations, but we'll definitely be there for the meal. But he didn't communicate that very well. So we're there having this wonderful meal, the wedding took place outside in this very fancy golf course down near Berwick, and everything's going wonderful. And Ian said, I wonder where we're sitting, because there was a lot of fancy people we didn't know. So we walked along and walked over to the thing, and we saw this, the big card, and we're looking up and down. Our names are not on it. I mean, that is so embarrassing. I said, Ian, did you? He goes, well, I just said we weren't. I said, they must have seen that. I said, we can't say anything. Just say nothing. We're just going to slip away. So we were back and chatting, and then the bell goes, right, everybody, come down, walk down here. And we're starting to walk. I said, well, when they say walk, let's just walk, and then we'll just walk. We'll walk back to the car to get something, and then we'll just drive away, because this is so embarrassing. So as we're walking down, the father of the bride actually was walking with us. I mean, how does that happen? He's walking with us. And I'm like, how do we just split away from him and go somewhere else? Because we have nowhere to go. And I said, we're just going to go back to the car. He goes, he says, what table are you sitting at? And we said, it's actually really embarrassing, but we've got this muddled up. He then went ahead and he said, no, you have. I said, no, please. We're so embarrassed. We're just going to quietly go. It's absolutely our fault. Ian's preaching in the morning. We're starting to make all excuses because you are coming to the wedding. And so he went in, and somebody hadn't turned up, and we got their seats and all this. It was just so embarrassing. So I feel their pain. This is awful. There is no more wine. How are they going to feed everybody? What are they going to do? It's just so I'm just trying to paint a picture. When things go bad, it's awful. Or you've turned up at an event and you're wearing the wrong clothes, We went somewhere, it was a black tie event. I had a little cocktail dress on and everything was fine. Ian should have had his kilt on, or he should have had, tux or whatever, I don't know what, he had a kilt. And as we're driving up to Ardo, I look around and I said, Ian, everyone is wearing a kilt, everyone is wearing tux, you are in a suit. He goes, that doesn't matter. No, everybody will be in a suit. And I said, Ian, we are early, we have time to go back, throw your kilt on. No. He wouldn't have anything of it. We go in, he realizes he is the only person in 300 guests with a suit on. He stands out like a sore thumb. He sits down and he does not get off his seat. Even to get food, he says, you go and get food for me. I'm leaving here. People had to come and say hello to him. These were all of his medical people he hadn't seen for ages, and this guy is dressed wrongly. Just so embarrassing. It's amazing what we can get embarrassed about. Anyways, that's when things go wrong at a wedding, okay? So what does Mary do? What does Mary do? Mary senses the embarrassment. Mary has read the room, and she thinks, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the only person that can solve this problem, because nobody can go and buy wine. Nobody can do anything. I'm just going to go to Jesus. Mary senses something. This is mainly about Mary, this story, because, Mary is quite incredible. She has held on to this secret for 30 years that her son is the Son of God. Everybody else that knew about it is in heaven. She knows. She also knows that his time is coming, and she's sticking with him like glue. Yep, you're going to a wedding. I'm coming too. You're going there. I'm coming too. She is wanting to go with him. She's wanting to be there. She's seen every single day of his life. She wants to be there when he is revealed. And so Mary goes and she says, when you think of it, Elizabeth and Zachariah, they knew who Jesus was, but they have passed on to heaven. Anna and Simeon, they knew who Jesus was. They prophesied. They're died and gone. The wise men, they've gone off they're in Asia somewhere. They knew about Jesus, but they're not there. Mary watched her son. Mary carried the shame of carrying an illegitimate son. She's carried the shame of having a baby out of wedlock. Everyone said, She says it's the Son of God. She says it was the Holy Spirit. We know it was Joseph. We know they were having hanky-panky. We know they were messing about before they were married. But no, she has carried this shame. She's like, okay, finally, everyone is now going to know who he is. She has known that John has now proclaimed who he is. She knows that John has revealed Jesus. She now knows that Jesus has been baptized. She knows her son's been missing for 40 days in the desert. He probably came back because he said, where have you been? What have you happened? I don't know. Did they have conversations? Did she say, you never believe it, Mom. I actually encountered the devil. I bet he told her everything. She was a safe place to talk to because she knew him and he knew her. I believe she knew all these things. And so she's thinking, he knows something's going to happen. And she senses it, I think even before he knows what he's going to do. She senses this is the right time. And she is finally tuned to the Holy Spirit and listening to his nudgings. It's coming. And he's like, what do you want me to do? And she goes, and then she goes to the servant and says, whatever he tells you, do it. Now, she does not know about water turning into wine. That has never, ever happened before. She knows the miracles about parting of the Red Sea and about Naaman's little girl. She knows the miracles about people being raised from the dead. She knows miracles. But there's no miracle that she knows about wine and wine running out. She's speaking in absolute faith. Whatever he says, do it. Whatever he says. Maybe she was thinking, he'll say, look, go to a shop and buy some and miraculously they'll give it to you. She has no idea, but she just knows Jesus can fix a problem. So there's 3 simple things I want to say. Obedience is obedience to divine instructions. The first thing is she is obedient. The conversation she's had with her son, and she's now saying, whatever he says, do it. Whatever he says, do it. And she displays total trust and total confidence in her son. She knows him, he knows her, and soon, and the time is finally here, that the world is going to know about her son. The world's going to know her journey. No one in Israel had seen miracles. When John the Baptist was conceived and Elizabeth had a baby, it said that there was a holy awe in the land of Judea because nobody had seen or heard miracles for 400 years. Since the times of Malachi, there had been no miracles. So miracles had stopped for 400 years. But when Elizabeth got pregnant, it said that there was a holy awe fell over the land of Judea because they were like, she's pregnant. She's in her 80s. That's impossible. And people were like, wow. So they do know there's something. Now, it's amazing. But the miracle journey is about to start again. No one had seen anything like this before. Nothing had happened again. It's interesting to note, I think in the very first miracle, this is just a side note, that Jesus is often spoken as that he's the bridegroom and we're his bride and he's going to come and collect us. So it's interesting that his first miracle takes place at a wedding and he takes the place of the bridegroom and fixes the problem. And he is our fixer. He is our bridegroom. He is coming for us. We are his bride. And so I just think that's just an interesting aside note that I had thought about as well. There's 3 parts to this miracle. The first is obedience. Do whatever he says. The second part is he says to the servants, fill the water pots with water. Fill the water jugs. So the second part was to fill it. And the third part was take the water to the master. So there's 3 parts to this miracle. If either part wasn't done, it wouldn't have happened. If they had decided to do whatever he says and then fill the pots with water, I'm too embarrassed to take that. That's embarrassing. I know what's inside. It's water. I'm not going to do that. The miracle would have never taken place. So each part is, and it's the same with us. When the Lord asks us to do things, we obey, we have to listen to his instructions, and then we have to step out in faith and do them. There's almost 3 parts to every journey we go on or every miracle story. If it doesn't make sense, it must be God. Noah, go and build a boat. What, in a desert? Really? Moses, pick up your staff and you'll see the sea part. What? David, go and choose 5 small stones. Don't put on that armor of Saul's. Go and choose 5 small stones and a sling. What, to kill that giant? You know, Joshua, walk around Jericho 7 times. Why? Why? I'd be questioning all the time. I would not be a very good miracle person, I tell you that. Naaman, go and dip for 7 times. I've dipped once, nothing's happened. I've dipped 2 or 3 times. What is the point? I'm going off home. I'm in a huff, you know. If it looks foolish, it will always look foolish until it is completed. Whatever you step out to do for God, it can look foolish until it's completed, you know. Let's go down to Union Street and let's go and start witnessing and giving out free cups of tea. Really? But let's start, in a few years you might see those miracle journeys. You know, let's go and give Gospels of John's out to every house in Aberdeen. Really? Will they read it? You know, I've thought, is this going to be thrown away? I've asked these questions. We don't know the seeds we're sowing. And so that's what these things are. It's all about obedience and trust. You know, when Ian was like, you know, a doctor, and he said, you know what? I feel God's asking me to become a pastor. I'm like, really? You've never been to Bible school? You know, you don't know the first thing about it. He goes, I know, but I just think that's what God's asking me to do. And so I remember Ian's medical friends, they came round, they were like, can we meet you for coffee? 2 or 3 of them took him out for meals and took him out for coffee to talk him out of this silly idea. Why are you doing this? This doesn't make sense. You have a big mortgage. You have 5 children. Why are you doing this? It didn't make sense. But he had to follow the leadings and the nudgings of the Holy Spirit, you know. And then within the first year, he has a triple bypass. It definitely didn't make sense. Wow, now you've taken us out of the security of medicine, and now how are we going to fix this? But it wasn't completed. And it still isn't completed. God's still working the miracle. So if it doesn't make sense, it must be God. Okay? So as well as obeying God's word perfectly like Mary did, the second point is abundant provision. Not just a little bit of provision. Not just 1 glass. Everybody gets 1 glass. But abundance. You know, imagine if Joshua hadn't completed the seven walks around there. Jericho would have never fallen. And you know, it would have been a disaster. They would have overtaken Israel. Imagine if David had decided, no, I'm not going to listen to that. 5 stones and a sling. I know it's hard to walk in, but I think I'll go out. At least I need to protect myself in Saul's armor, and I'll go and attack him. The giant wouldn't have come down, you know. If Naaman had returned angry or only dipped once, he would have never been healed from leprosy. You know, so don't let fear be the thing that stops you stepping out. Whatever he says, do it, you know. And a miracle, I said at the beginning, surpasses human understanding and human reasoning. And it requires divine intervention. You know, imagine, so I just wanted to do an illustration here, okay. Fill the jars with water. So you fill the jars with water. And the second thing was, take it with the cup and go and offer it. Can you imagine as they walked with this? These are servants walking with water. The lowest of the low, the servants walking with this water. We're going to lose our jobs. This is embarrassing. We've got a job here. We've got security. We're walking with this. We're about to be made fools of. You know, the second thing is we're going to look so silly. We're going to lose the security of our job. And what if we get punished? What if he punishes us? What if he's a master? We're slaves. We're servants. What's our life going to be like? And I think it's wonderful that the Lord revealed the miracle to servants. He revealed the miracle to those who were down there, those who didn't have much. And that's, you know, this was the start of his ministry, and this was how his ministry was going to go. It was the marginalized. It was the outcast. It was the widow. It was the single mom. It was a woman caught in adultery. It was all these different things that Jesus said, I am going to start with the lowest. I'm going to start with the servants. They're going to see the miracle. Do you know, the servants walked with this, and as they poured it out, I put a little bit of Kool-Aid in there. As they poured it out, they offered that to the master of ceremonies. And the master of ceremonies drank it. He didn't know about this and didn't know about this. But the servants knew. And so the servants knew what God had done. The servants knew that they had filled this with water. They knew. I think when they poured it out and he's drinking, they were like, what just happened? What just happened? He's liking the water, and then they're pouring it out, and there's enough for everybody. In fact, there's more for everybody. They had wine, and so the servants were the one that saw the miracle of Jesus. I believe they were like, I'm going to follow this guy. That's amazing. Back, what was it? And I believe that's how God started off his journey. He started, the master of ceremonies tasted the water that was now wine, not knowing where it had come from. He had seen it being poured, not knowing where it had come from. He said, a host always brings the best wine first, and when everybody's a little bit tipsy, then he brings out the cheap wine, and they have no idea what they're drinking. But you have kept the best until last. And I think in our lives, the Lord keeps the best until now. I feel, I was thinking about living in 2025. We are living in the best of times. I know they're the worst of times, but they are the best of times. Can you imagine how exciting it is hearing about what God is doing amongst the young people up and down our country, hearing about miracles, hearing about revivals? Yes, there's rumors of war. Yes, there's lots of different things, but we are living in miracle days. Just even talking to different people this morning, they were like, at my work, someone just said, I was at that Christmas experience, and that started a conversation. We are living at amazing times, and so we are living in great times, and God has kept the best till now. You are the best he's kept. He could have allowed you to live in another generation. He's allowed you to be born in this generation, in this season, in this time, because he's got a work for all of you to do. The three elements were obeying, filling the pot, and taking it to the host. We serve a God of abundance. Ephesians 3:20, God can do anything, far more than you can imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing you around, cajoling you, but by working within you and the Spirit. I remember when I got the verse, we were looking for a building in John Street. And we were looking for a miracle building. We were like, God, we need a miracle. How are we going to do this? It's impossible. It seemed impossible. We saw this bit of land, and you'll see it in John Street. Nobody has built on the land. And it's overgrown with graffiti and that, and it was all demolished. And we thought, that's perfect. It's going to be in the centre of town. We'll have I was saying to you, we could have a multi-store car park, and we could rent it out during the week. We could make money, It said, we didn't fight for this land. We didn't work for it. It was a gift. You gave it, smiling as you gave it, delighting as you gave it. And so that was the verse. So I texted Ian and the leaders. They were going to go and look. And I said, this is the verse I have. I believe God's got this land for us, blah, blah, blah. They put in an offer, and the offer was laughed at. We put in 2 million, and they were looking for 8 million for a piece of land, okay? And they kind of laughed at us. And the person who bought it, I'm not sure if it's gone bankrupt, but it's lain derelict ever since then. And I remember thinking, okay, Lord, this verse isn't maybe for that building, but it is for a building. And we stood on that and claimed that God was going to give us something that we didn't have to fight for. We didn't have to bargain. We didn't have to beg. We didn't have to take trips to America with a begging bowl saying, please help us in Scotland. Because there was all sorts of ideas that you could have done, that people were saying, well, this is the way to get money. This is how to do it. Go and apply for money from the lottery fund. All sorts of ways. God gave us this gift. It was a miracle. And that's why we hold it lightly. This is nothing to do with us. This is all to do with God. It was the water. We carried the water, the offer. I remember when the offer went, said, all we have is, I know you want 3 million, but all we have is 2 million. Is that possible that we, and they went back and said, yeah, we'll wipe off 1 million. That's when our water gets turned into wine and the supernatural takes place. And I remember when they were going to look at this building, again, I wasn't there. I think I seemed to miss all the important bits. I think I was childminding or something. And I just said, oh, well, when you're walking around this building, this is how great my faith is, okay? When you're walking around this building, I want you to sing this song, because I'm playing it in repeat. Lord, I look to you. I won't be overwhelmed. Give me wisdom to see things like you do. Lord, I look to you. You're where my help comes from. Give me wisdom to know just what to do. Because I thought, this is too big. This is too much. This is a building that Hillsong could buy, or if Lakewood decided to plant in Aberdeen, they could buy this building. This was too big for us. And I was like, Lord, I'm a bit overwhelmed. This is too much. But he's not overwhelmed, because he is a God of provision, abundant provision. So if it's too small for me, it's just when he starts giving. So the second thing, so as well as being totally obedient to what he asks you to do, and the second one, as well as carrying out his instructions and not tampering with them. How many of us tamper with them? Oh, I'll do this or I'll do that. Or I think God's saying this. Another thing is we need to be careful. We are hearing from God. You know, I've heard so many people, God has said, if we do this, if we fast, if we pray, if we do this, if we do that, then this is going to happen. And the date comes and the date goes and nothing happens. So let's be careful that we are just leading, if it is your will, Lord, if this is your plan. And that's when my tinkering comes in. I think, I need to get my finger out of it. Let's see what God does. It needs to be his ideas and his plans. The third one is responding to the invitation of Jesus to bring him into the ordinary things of our lives, the ordinary clay pots, the ordinary water to survive on. And you bring your ordinary and he breathes on it and the extraordinary happens. He is interested in the ordinary. You know, this family, we don't know who this family was. It was an unnamed family. We have no idea, but Jesus was interested in their embarrassment. He was interested in their honor, I suppose. He thought, poor family, what am I going to do? I could do something here. He was interested in the humiliation this would bring. Nobody would remember anything about this wedding. They would remember this was a stingy man that didn't have enough. And they were inadequate. They were embarrassing. You know, this man's marrying off his children and he has nothing to give. That's what they would remember. But Jesus says, I'll step into this ordinary situation and I'm going to do something extraordinary that maybe the master of ceremonies won't remember. He might remember the great wine. But this is going to be a journey for the servants, for my disciples. I've got 5 disciples with me. They need to see me. And my darling mom, she's waited long enough. She needs to see me. You know, it was saying that Jesus wants to get involved. He wants to bring provision to what is lacking in our life. He wants to bring transformation, and he isn't focused on being he doesn't mind us being disturbed. You know, sometimes we put these, you know, when you go to a hotel, you put this do not disturb sign outside the door because you don't want them to bother you the next day. You want to have a long lie. And some of us go around life with a do not disturb sign on that's like, don't bother me, that's too much for me. And sometimes, many times, it is that conversation that you really don't want to have, or that moment where you're thinking, I'm in a rush here, I need to go there. That's when the moment comes. And the Lord's like, are they more important than me, than what your agenda is? You know, when it said, feed my sheep, you know, he says, do you love me? Feed my sheep. So I remember what he said to Peter, and I think, okay, if I love you, this moment is important. This conversation is important. Me putting aside my agenda and spending some time here, this is important. And that's what I want to do. So I'm just looking at time here. So the enemy wants us to stay small. The enemy wants us to believe we're not worthy and that we have no authority. But the Holy Spirit wants to remind us that we are more than conquerors. We have been anointed. You have been appointed. You have been authorized and empowered and set apart to accomplish great things for God. You may not be turning water into wine, but you know what? You're filling clay pots. You're doing what he tells you to do. You're working in the ordinary. We have no idea that when people get saved, it's not because they hear an amazing sermon on a Sunday. There's probably lots of seeds, lots of grandmothers praying, lots of conversations in the workplace, maybe a little tract here, maybe something here. There's little things happening that suddenly culminate in somebody getting saved. It's not just a one-off moment. You're part of that journey, and we can be part of that as well. In conclusion, it's living open-handed, living generously with your life, tuning in, Lord, you want me to have a conversation here? Or is this going to be a distraction? No, just walk on. Don't get involved in that. That's just not for you. You know, obeying without questioning and placing your trust. Prayer should never be, I'm going to say this in closing, prayer should never be our last resort. It should be our first response. Mary's reaction was, she could have done all sorts of things. She could have said, right, let's just disappear. This is embarrassing. This is family. She's like, I'm going to go to Jesus. He is the only person. This is an impossible situation. He is the only person can solve it. I don't know what he's going to do, but I'm just going to trust him implicitly. And so that's what I was going to say. We've got some questions to look at, but I remember wondering about this whole thing, water into wine. When I was younger, I thought, what a silly story. I mean, is he encouraging everybody to go and get drunk? And, you know, I have a stance on teetotal, but not other people do. It doesn't matter. But I just think, this doesn't help that stance, does it? This doesn't help my cause. Or this isn't good for someone who is an ex-alcoholic listening to this thinking, oh, that lets me go back. That wasn't the point. The point was Mary's complete obedience. Whatever he says, do it.